Hello there, everyone. It's Miss Bew, and I'm just going to walk you through how to graph this wonderful information from our stress analysis data. So in this particular case, I have an example here where I'll show you how to calculate the averages and to make a beautiful graph. So for this fictitious data, we have Miss Plattis, Mr. Clutho, Miss Weavers, Mr. Cook, and Mr. Lindholm. They were the walkers. So we got their heart rate before they started doing activity, after walking without a backpack, after walking with a backpack, and after walking with extra weight. And our goal was to see how the heart rate changed over those time periods and with that activity. We also have our control group, which is Mr. Bew, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Corcoran, and Ms. House. They also have these timestamps of walking without a backpack and all that jazz, but keep in mind that these people did no walking. They are a control group. They just sat around and watched the others do the physical activity. For the first part of this video, I'm going to talk about how to make Google Sheets work for you and a shortcut for how to calculate averages. The second part of the video, if you want to skip to that later, you certainly can, but that's just going to be the graphing portion. So the cool thing about Google Sheets is that each of these cells can be like basically a calculator. So I'm going to click on this walking averages resting heart rate. It's over here on the right side of the screen, outlined in blue. I'm going to go up to my formula bar so you can see my mouse. Oh, it's going over here. It's up by the zoom for 100%. And this is your formula bar. This is where you can type in any text that you want to go in that box, including mathematical formulas. So this f of x, you might have seen this in math class, that is a function or a formula. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. If you know what kind of formula you want to use, you can just put an equal sign, and then you can use keys like A. If I want to do average, I would type in an A and then a V, and it'll pop up all sorts of mathematical formulas it can do for me. And I actually just want to do my average. So that if I click on this average, it'll say numerical average value in a data set, ignoring text, which is exactly what I want. I want to calculate the averages. So I click on average, and then you'll see this open bracket. And so now's the time where I decide which cells do I actually want to take the average of. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can type in the boxes of them. So like if I want Plattis's resting heart rate, this would be in column B and row 4. So I can type in a capital B and a 4. And you'll see that it changes to this like orangish color. That tells you that it is highlighting a cell. Now that's one way you can do it. And then what you would do is a colon, and then you would do your last one. The colon is saying I want everything in between. It's kind of like a dash. So if I say I'm starting with B4, then I would end with F4 for Mr. Lindholm. Now I could type in F4 here, and look, it'll highlight everything for me. It's like, hey, are you sure this is what you want? I'm like, heck yeah, that's exactly what I want. Another way you can do this is once you have that open bracket, this is really cool. You can just highlight the cells you want to average, and it'll fill that in automatically for you. It's a little bit faster. That way you don't have to type everything in. But then I'm going to do a closed bracket, and I'm going to hit enter because that's exactly what I want. And you'll see in this box that I originally picked, it actually calculated that average for me. If I click on the box, it'll show me the formula I typed in. And if I click out of it, it'll just show me the answer, which is the average of 65. That's pretty cool. Now for my second walking average, I can see the blue box, it's highlighted. I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm gonna go up to my formula bar. I'm gonna hit equal. Now, if you're not really sure which formula you wanna use, you can actually go up to insert. Oh gosh, hang on, I gotta erase that equal sign first. You can go up to insert, and you can click on function. And now here it will give you access to all sorts of things. If you're doing an engineering calculation, you can type that in there. If you just want to find the minimum, the maximum, if you want to count things, find the summation of things, there are all sorts of options for you to scroll from and try to find. So in this case, average is really easy to get. I'm just going to type in average. I'm going to highlight the cells that I want, which is for the walking with no backpack, hit enter, and it calculates it for me. Now, the really cool thing about Google Sheets is it will suggest an autofill. It's like, I noticed you're doing these two things. You probably want to do the following rows for your next two. And I'm like, heck yeah, I do. That's exactly what I want to do. So if I click on this 92.5 or 0.4, I can see up here in the formula bar that it's B6 through F6. And that's correct. You do want to double check and make sure it's actually looking at the numbers you want. And then I double check this last one, B7 to F7, boom, that's exactly what I wanted. Now I'm going to go do my control groups, and it's going to be the exact same thing. I click in that first box, I'm going to hit equals. I'm going to do my average, and I'm going to highlight now my control group. And there it is. Now there's one other shortcut you can do. This is just a fun fact about Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. Once you highlight a cell, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the cell, there's like this solid square. If you click on that solid square, your mouse is going to turn from a regular mouse to like a plus sign. And what that tells you is it's going to copy anything in that cell. It's going to copy the formatting. It's going to copy the formula, and you can drag it down to the other boxes. And it actually will do exactly what the suggested formatting does, where it adjusts the formula so that it takes the boxes beneath it. So just by doing that, I don't have to type anything else in. It did all the math for me, which is pretty darn sweet. That kind of concludes how you can use Google Sheets to make all your averages for you. Now we're going to pivot to the point where it's like, hey, how do I make a graph out of this beautiful data? So I'm going to highlight my data if I'm making my graph. This is everything I want to include. It's got my different labels, it's got my titles, and it also has my actual data. Once you have that highlighted, you can do a couple of things. You can click on this insert chart button, which looks like a bar graph. Or if you don't see that, you can go up to insert and you can click on chart. Either of those options will get you what you want. So I click on chart and it shows me this interesting chart right here with a bunch of different colors. So this tells me that I need to alter my data because this isn't exactly what I want, right? I need to make sure that my chart is on, let's see, I need to switch columns and rows. So as I did that, I unclicked that box of switching columns and rows. You might not need to do that on yours. I had to on mine in order to get my control group and my non-control group next to each other. That was my whole goal. I'm going to use row 3 as headers because for me, that's what makes the most sense. I have my walking averages and my control group averages. So you can see the difference between my blue and my red, which is perfect. And you can see my timestamps at the bottom, keeping in mind that even though the red has data for each section, they are my control group and they did no activity. And then we also have our y-axis over here, which has this great numbers. That's going to be our beats per minute, but there's no title. So at this point, I need to customize my chart. I've got it looking the way I want it to look data-wise. Now I need to make it look a little bit better so that it's easy to understand. So if you go to customize and you click chart style, you can change all sorts of things. You can change your background. You can change your chart border color, your font, even if you want to. Maybe you want to make it 3D, go for it. But I typically don't change a lot there. I like the lighter background. I think it really makes the data pop. Now, importantly, I'm going to go to my chart title. So if you click chart and axis titles, you can see my chart has no title formally right now, and that's not great. So I'm going to type in stress analysis lab data, and then I'm going to type in a colon and say walkers versus control group. I know that's a long title, but for me, it's specific. It's what we're looking for. I'm going to go down to bold my title, and I'm also going to center it. It's just a personal preference. You don't have to do those things. You can also change your title color if you want. Say you want to be purple, you can change it to whatever you want. I'm going to go for a more professional, darker color. It's just for, it's just what I want. Now in the same location, if you go back to that drop down, you can click on horizontal axis title and vertical axis title. These are absolutely what we're looking for. So for vertical axis title, remember vertical's up and down like a ladder. I need to change that so that we know what those numbers are. And for our particular lab, we did heart rate. And every time you have some type of label that you're having there, if it's a measurement, you have to include the units. So in this particular case, it's heart rate, and you always put your units in parentheses. So I put BPM for beats per minute. So you always, whenever you're labeling something that you've measured, you put the title of the measurement and the units that you're measuring in. That's how we know where that is. And I'm going to bold and italicize that so that we know what that is. After that, if you really want to change what the colors of your boxes are, of your bars, you can click on series. Right now it says apply to all series. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go to my walking average and I can change my fill color. I can change my line color. I'm actually going to change my fill color to something a little bit more fun. I'm going to go for a teal because I like teal. Ooh, that's nice. Absolutely. And then I can add my data labels if I'd like. Personally, I think that's a lot clearer. I like adding my data labels. You can change what they look like. You can make them bold if you'd like. It's however you really want it to go. You can do a trend line if you want, but for this particular graph, we don't really need it. I think it really makes it a little bit messier rather than making it clearer. I'm gonna go to my control group. I'm gonna change this color. Why? Because I can. What would go well with teal? Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. I don't mind that at all. Go to my data labels and I'm going to make those bold so they stand out. And now I've got some really clean contrast between these two data sets. And that's what I'm looking for. Other things you can add is you can change your horizontal axis. You can change your vertical axis. Maybe you don't want to count up by 25s. In this case, it makes sense for us. So that's why I'm going to keep it that way. You can also add grid lines and ticks. So this allows you to see like the bars in the back. It just makes it easier to see the scale. You don't have to do anything with that. It's just an option. But once you have all of that done, you now have a beautiful graph that can be used for your data analysis section of your lab. Thank you very much for paying attention during this video. I hope it was helpful and have a wonderful day.